So review the exercise, and the first thing you're asked to do is identify an ethical issue. So imagine you're a student in class, and you have in front of you Associate Dean Franklin's file. You have a document request, arguably too narrow to include this document. What ethical issue have you been confronted with? So what I want you to think about is imagining you've got this answer to document request that you have to prepare. You've got the file, and you're trying to decide whether that document should be produced in response. Think of yourself trying to make that decision, reflect on it, and then share that in a memo, in a side memo. What do you think? Mary?
Is that because I came into class late?
Yes.
Wow. Well, first I know there's this thing that I'm supposed to represent my client, and even though I really think it sucks that poor Mr. Wisconsin, you know, I think that really is horrible that he had to leave and he had to do all these things, and so I had this sympathy for him. On the other hand, my job is to represent my client, and so I can't just let my feelings about that sympathy determine that. Now, then the other side of me is saying, how did they find out about this note? If they made a motion to compel,
No, we haven't gotten to 2 yet. Let's stay on 1.
Oh, okay. You want to stay on my first issue?
Stay on 1.
Keep going with it. Okay. So on 1, I then say, to represent my client, I shouldn't give something over that is more than what's required. On the other hand, what's my client's goal? Is my client's goal just to answer narrowly this question? Or is my client's goal, so I have to look at that. What is my client's goal? Is my client's goal to be even more above board in the responses to this discovery? Because they also have a reputation as a law school. So I've got to really explore what my client's goal is here, number 1. Number 2, if this note is in here, it does sound like it's information. I haven't taught civil procedure or done it in a long time, but it sounds like it's something I have to honestly explore to see whether I need to answer that. So it has raised a lot of questions for me about what my role is. And I also know that my client is, oh my God, this litigation could cause them to close the law school. Because maybe if it does this, and all of this comes out, and all the people in the New York Times and on the blogs keep saying that law schools, like what, 200 of us have to close, this is a major issue for my client. So I need to really explore my client's goals, and then I need to, as my own certificate related to the bar, which I am obligated to do, I have a separate role when I put my name on anything to make sure that my own professional ethical code is abided by.
Excellent reflection, Mary.
Yes.
Thank you for it. You haven't made a decision. And I have...
It's peremptory to make a decision without reflection first.
That's fine, but I'm asking you to do...
What am I going to do?
2. See, this is an important part of the course design. The model is...
You want me to pick one?
The student has to decide whether to produce this thing or not. What do you think, yes or no?
That's why clinical methodology is better, because you reflect before you make the decision.
I didn't say you couldn't reflect first. I thanked you for your reflection. I'm asking for 2, though.
So what am
What's
I
the
going to
decision?
do? When you receive Rule 30 that are arguably too narrow to include this document, what ethical issues have you confronted with? I told you that. Will you decide to produce the document?
Yes or no?
Without being able to go back and talk to my client?
There is a certain artificiality to these. It's a simulation.
No client. I got
Give,
it.
give me a yes or no.
No, you
Would anybody else like to offer yes or no? Bob?
Your client does, it's not your client's license. It's your license. The client doesn't make a decision on whether it gets produced, or you can talk about it with them, but ultimately you make the decision. And if the client says don't produce it and you have an ethical obligation to do it, you leave, you fire them.
I'll answer David's question.
All right, Mary.
Okay,
We have
so
a
will I
decision.
decide to produce the document when it's arguably too narrow to include this document? No.
Good. We have an answer. So, no, and a wonderful reflection in the memo about this. And the thinking that Mary went through, that's exactly what I want my students to be doing, to thinking those kinds of things through. And it's only through creating the situation in which they're confronted with it, it seems to me that they do that. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask one question, though? The point about the client that Mary made, I think, is a very good one, and it was a question I'm going to ask you later on.
Yeah, when we do it more in detail, let's do that.
Because what Bob answered has to do with ethics. Professional identity has to bring in the client.
Yes, indeed, and that is part of our discussion later this
Okay.
afternoon. I want to stay on my time block this morning, and let's go, if it be, yes?
There's also a strategic,
We have another question.
there's also a strategic
There is.
question, which is, are they going to discover this some other way?
Yeah.
Okay, and if the answer to that is yes, it makes the ethical decision a lot easier. For example,
Wonderful.
if they're going to take a deposition of somebody, and they're going to go, oh yeah, I wrote this memo, you're going to go hand it over and make yourself look like a good guy and disclosing everything, despite, and don't get me wrong about the ethical reflections, they were great.
That has to do with what's best for the client, in my view.
And
Not just what's best for you, what's best for the client.
it is always wonderful, Terry, when the interests of your client and your professional identity development and your ethical reflections coincide. Those are just, that's your day. That makes your day. So so when you're teaching discovery, it comes back to there's a strategy issue that all these kind of overarches that's always mixed in with the ethical reflection.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this done in class as we did here?
Yes, what I was just going to say was, I'm missing my students this afternoon to be with you, but we just did class. This is what we do in class. Exactly, we reflect on all of these issues. And then they have to do it and make the decision and reflect on why they did, which might be any number of one of those reasons that we just talked about. Great, let's turn to number two.
Question, ethical,
I'm
are
sorry.
you referring to the rules of professional conduct? When you say ethical, are you saying what are the ethical rules? Or are
Yes.
you talking about ethics in a greater sense?
The rules.
So,
Yeah.
the bare minimum conduct.
floor.
The bare minimum conduct you have to comply with.
The floor. Jerry?
Just so I can be ready for the final, what's the right answer?
He's pretending he's a student.
Don't we love Jerry? Thank you. All right, number two. Does anybody have a decision on number two and or reflection? If do the reflection first, that's fine, but I'm going to ask for the decision. Number two. So Russ, to be more specific, Russ, to be more specific and answer your question, question one is the floor. Question two is above the floor, right? So the ethical issue, decision, reflection, anybody want to take a shot at two?
If I understand this, you put a sticker on this document that
Yeah,
says attorney-client work product?
Effectively, yes.
Okay. It doesn't make it work product. And it doesn't make it protected. And putting the sticker, the document was created by the client earlier, and it has nothing to do with your internal analysis, case strategy, or anything else. So peel-off label, once you put that on and you believe it's covered by the discovery request, your privilege analysis is gone. Therefore, produce it.
Good. Good, excellent. Roberto,
What if the note's from the general counsel?
gets a little more complicated.
I'd oppose it because you're going to learn more about the litigation by opposing the motion than producing the document, regardless of the outcome.
Good.
So this is not,
strategy.
to me, it's not an identity issue, it's a strategy question.
Okay, good. So, excellent. So these are exactly the kinds of things that we do in this class. This is the kind of discussion we have. The situations that I've just mocked up with you just twice happen dozens of times every week.